right? And I'm live here on YouTube. Here we go. Here we go, everybody. Here we go. We're live on YouTube and we are streaming from youtube.com. So we're going to set this so you can see us. And we're also streaming. Good morning. Hi, Facebook. Hey, how are you all doing? It's Thursday, right? It's still Thursday? Wow. I thought the week was over. So if you see me wearing a sweater, I'm going to say, really? It's like March, spring started, and I'll be like, yeah, but it's Michigan. They never really got the memo. So what can I tell you? I'm doing the best that I can here because Michigan is Michigan, right? So we're trying to uh, follow Michigan's rules, which, as you know, are never really, Michigan's rules are never really what they are in terms of, um, I can't seem to get this one angled properly. I thought I did. Michigan's rules are never, Michigan doesn't follow the calendar. So, uh, uh, so we're kind of like, we're kind of like right there with that. So if you don't mind, join me. So how are you all doing? I wanted to say, is Dr. James Simpson on here? Where is he? Anybody seen Dr. James Simpson? Good morning, Cecile. How are you doing? How are you doing? Nice to see you here. Tanisha Johnson. She's an awesome author, y'all. Just go out. Walter Stretch Robinson. How's it going? I know you must be looking at me like, huh, she's wearing braids. Yeah, then that happened. Right? Something that's why they say never, because I used to say I would never wear braids. And then I suddenly found that it actually suits me and I actually like it. I really like it. So today we want to talk about addictions. And it's kind of like this is a session that you may want to invite others to join. We are going to go deep into addictions. There are all types of addictions, right? People have all kinds of stuff that they're addicted to. Some of it we confess, some of it we don't, right? So I hope my Periscope and Twitter audience are joining me because they usually chime in really, really quickly. Let me get my headphones together so that you can hear me better, right? Can you hear me better, right? So today we want to talk about, hey, Periscope and Twitter folks. Thank you all for supporting me, by the way. And I wanted to talk about addictions because not just because Wendy Williams, the TV talk show host, who recently confessed that she has a problem with addictions, it's not just that. It's the fact that there's so many of us who are hiding in the darkness. And until we come into the light, we'll never be set free. So today I want to set you free from whatever it is that you might be addicted to because you must walk strong. You must walk in your truth. You must walk in the power that is yours, and you must walk in who you are. And I've like many others, I've come across so many people who have been addicted to stuff that has kept them bound for years and years and years. Stuff that has bound people up, stuff that has kept people, imprisoned people. And I want to talk about addictions within the context of how it is a prison. Your addiction is a prison, right? So, uh, if you've been watching the news, there's lots of stuff going on. What do you all think about this Kellyanne Conway stuff? Is that like somebody's divorce about to be played out or what? Kellyanne Conway is a communications director for the president, and she and her husband have been engaging in some sort of Twitter battle, which tells you they probably aren't living together if they have to take their conversations to Twitter, right? That means nobody is living together, nobody is having a meal together, and nobody is sleeping together, right? And the president, in an apparent attempt to defend her, took to Twitter to call her husband a loser. That kind of is not cool. When your boss publicly calls your spouse a loser, it's not looking good for that marriage. It's not looking good, right? So she's taken to Twitter to talk about it. And she says good morning, Dr. Simpson. I just give you a shout out. How you doing? Nice to see you, right? And she said that she's worried about the children. When someone confesses they're worried about the children, that means a divorce is imminent. And that is a spectacular kind of way to live, to watch your marriage and your relationship played out publicly. And sometimes we don't realize that public pressure affects people's private lives. Do you realize that? Because if you have cameras are always on you, people are always looking at you, there's no way that that's not going to have an effect on your private life. At some point, something that you say or do, your spouse is going to say something about it. And your spouse might disagree with you privately. Okay? These things happen. So he disagrees with you about what you say, what you think, or what you say based on your job or based on your position. And because he disagrees with you, especially if it's the male spouse, even when it's the female spouse, they're going to talk about it. And especially if they don't like your boss, because it is apparent that her husband, though he's a Republican, does not like her boss. And obviously that is very clear. So she's about to experience a visit to the divorce court. That looks like where that is going. I just simply find it, I'm like, don't we have enough stuff to worry about? Don't we have to worry about like North Korea with nukes and stuff? And don't we have to worry about another mass shooting? Shouldn't we be getting AR-15s off the street? I don't know that I want to be worried about someone else's boss calling someone's husband a loser. People have very complicated lives. I can tell you that. Life is complicated, right? So I don't know how that one is going to play out. That is just simply a spectacular thing that is going on. It's interesting to see. And then did you see the story about the poppy fields in California? Well, most of California has been in a drought for some time. Well, they got a lot of rain recently. And in one town in particular, the poppies emerged on the hillsides. And suddenly the hills are ablaze with the sound of music. People just suddenly started visiting this area in an effort to see what is going on with the poppies. And I can begin to tell you, I was like amazed. And I'm like, if more rain could fall, perhaps they would have more vegetation that would hold the roots of trees and that would hold the soil together. You remember that from geography, right? That when when rain falls, it causes vegetation to grow, and vegetation holds soil together so that soil does not run down the hillsides in a flood when it starts raining and it becomes a flood, right? So we hope that is true of California. And California is interesting because Northern California is very hilly and mountainous and green. Have you ever been to Sacramento? Sacramento is very hilly and very green. Even from when you're flying in, you're like, wow. And then you go to Southern California and you're like, what happened here? There's a desert down here. Right? But people love it. There are people who live in California, especially Southern California, who would not give it up, right? They love living in LA. They think it's fabulous. They think it's great. And they enjoy it. The cost of living is through the roof. You can't pay rent. You can't pay mortgage. You can't, it's crazy. It's just like living in San Francisco. Have you been to San Fran? Cost of living there is another ridiculous place to be. Like, seriously, have you been there? It's crazy. The cost of real estate is unbelievable. There are people who work in San Francisco, but who live 100 miles away and commute every day 100 miles because they simply cannot afford to live in San Francisco. I don't know. It says a lot about our society because it says a lot about where we are trending. It says a lot about the lines that are drawn and how the gap between rich and poor is ever widening. I read a study recently that said in the last 30 years, the gap between the rich and the poor is so far gone. It has increased in the last 30 years. And the 1%, what used to be the 1% is now the 0.1%. So you have to be part of the billionaires club, right? That's how much wealth is being acquired. Now, if really and truly, if we were really thinking about this contextually, what we would realize is that the conversation universally, and when I say universally, I mean everywhere in the world, has always been about what? Rich and poor, right? And that started revolutions, didn't it? It started revolutions. It started the Industrial Revolution. It started social revolutions for change in France, in Britain, right? And we're looking at what, 400, 500 years later, we thought that if we elected people, government of the people, by the people, for the people, that that would have changed. Still hasn't. The conversation, somebody wrote on Twitter yesterday, I should have screenshot it. He says he's in his 60s and he remembers Eisenhower as president. And he said this. He said that in the last 60 years, the conversation has been, that he said in the last 60 years, the conversation has always been about the rich and the poor. What has mattered now is what? That the gap has widened. A lot of that has to do with how people are individually. I have found that people, the richer some people become, is the more they want and the more they want. So they're constantly influencing politicians, they're constantly influencing legislation, they're constantly influencing policymakers to ensure that policies are complementary to them. It's the best way I can say it. I don't want to use any other word because I don't want to incite anything, right? But that's what they seek to do. So they seek to ensure that legislation, public legislation and public policy affects them significantly better than it would affect you and I. And at some point, there either is going to be a really level playing field or humanity is going to give up and say there's never going to be any level playing field. The playing field will never be leveled. I don't know which it is going to be. I hope it turns out to be that we can arrive at some parity, that the playing field becomes level. Because here's the deal. We can't just sit back all the time and just have public policy favors one group of people so that one group of people consistently become the beneficiaries of policy, or they are the beneficiaries. We can't, it just can't continue like that. At some point, we need to start making our voices heard, that people understand that we have a say in the process and that we intend to stay in the process and that our voices need to be heard. For instance, here in Michigan, the Congresswoman from Michigan's 13th district, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, is introducing a bill in Congress that will say that credit scores should not be used to determine insurance rates. Since insurance is required by law, car insurance, since car insurance is required by law, then there should be a level playing field so that insurance rates are affordable for everyone. So this conversation happened on Twitter a couple of days ago, and people were like, well, are you trying to say that those of us who are fiscally responsible should be punished? Do you see how people are stupid? That is a stupid conversation, isn't it? You're simply stupid. You're not human. You've never lived. Do you know that there are people who want to pay their bills but can't pay their bills because they don't have a job? They don't have a job because they can't get a job. Why can't people get a job? Why can't people get a job? They're old because the society says once you pass 45, they put you out to pasture, right? They can't find a job in the field they're in. You have college graduates graduating with a degree who can't find a job in what they studied in school. So they have to settle for a job that pays them $9 to $15 an hour, but they have student loans to pay back. Are you feeling me? So tell me again about people not being fiscally responsible. That usually comes from somebody who is full of white privilege, who is looking at the glass in a different way until it's his turn. And he's put out to pasture by his company. And all of a sudden he recognizes that his mortgage is upside down and his car note is upside down. Recently, a woman in Michigan wrote and took to inform people that when her husband was alive, they had two cars, right? One was leased and the other one they owned. And the insurance on both cars were affordable. When her husband died, all of a sudden, her insurance rates doubled. And so she turned in one of the cars, the car that was leased, And when she called the insurance company, they told her that her rates went up because she's a woman and she's single. Are you listening to me? So they charge women for more, and they charge they charge her because she's single. Is that discriminatory or what? And she says as long as her husband was alive, she was paying me to, but she says when it doubled, it became prohibitive. Yes, she's white, and yes, she's middle class. So do with that as you will, right? So what I'm saying is the playing field, therefore, needs to be what? Leveled. Do you see now? So credit scores should not be a factor in determining car insurance rates, auto insurance rates, because auto insurance is required by law. In much the same way, I am beginning to think when I look at the landscape, the social landscape, and the political landscape, I'm beginning to think that credit scores should not be used to determine things like heat, having running water, having heat, having cable because you got to watch, having internet. That might be optional, but in terms of being able to pay your, being able to have electricity in your house and having running water, I don't think credit scores should be used for that because those things are required activities of daily living. Are we clear? Do you see what I mean? And so when you look at it, you're asking yourself, when you think of poverty and when you think of social injustice and when you think of violence, you as for those of us, we start looking at what are the contributing causes to violence? What is going on in the home? What is going on in the environment around the person that has caused them to react this way? And when you start looking at it, it is inescapable that the conclusion is that violence is there, but poverty is a major determining factor. Poverty is such that even for folks who are middle class, your poverty is determined by how much money do you have left after you've paid your bills. Because it's quite possible that you're making your payments. As long as you're making your payments, you have some fluidity. So you're making your payments on your credit card. You are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Sometimes you flip one card, you don't pay this one until next month or whatever. But you're paying your mortgage, your car insurance, your notes, and so on time. But you don't have any wiggle room. You don't have any money left over after all the bills are paid, even after the second check comes in the month. Because most people use their first check to pay the major bills, the house, the car, the insurance, the lights, and then the other ones to buy make sure there's food, gas, and pay the credit card bills and so on, right? So even for folks who are thinking like that, there's still not enough money left over after they have paid all their bills. But you're making the payment so you can continue to live. That's still poverty. That is still poverty because you know what's happening there? People start talking, people start fighting, people start disagreeing, and relationships and marriages compact and fall apart. Right? So we've got to, when you look at, and people are sometimes, most of us, we don't want to accept or admit that, maybe we have a problem. So people don't come forward and publicly talk about this stuff. People don't talk about this stuff, right? And then stuff starts happening and people start having issues. And before you know it, marriages fall apart. You end up in divorce court. And that brings a whole other level of poverty because now there's a struggle to maintain two households because that's what divorce does. You're maintaining two households. So whereas everything was under one roof, now you're paying child support to your spouse who has to maintain the children in another house while you have to maintain it in another house. Do you see what I mean? At some point, we're going to have to look at the root causes of these things and create legislation to guide them. So what I'm saying is we need to think about it in a broader context. Think about its impact on you. Let's say you don't worry about me or you're not worried about somebody else and let them worry about themselves. But how about you? Think about you. How much wiggle room do you have after you have paid all your bills, right? Because any house anywhere, it costs some money to run that house, right? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 median, right? Then what happens? You see where I'm coming from? So once you determine that, you now have to go to your congresswoman, congressperson, your representative, and say, For some reason, this is not working for me. So I need you all to go to Rashida Tlaib has a Twitter page, she has a Facebook page. Give her some support and tell her we're with you. And I agree that credit scores should not be used to determine. And don't get off on, one person put it out on Twitter that my credit score is in the high 800s. You could still do with some help. Everyone could do with some help. If credit scores are not used to determine insurance rates, then what's going to happen is that it's going to do one major thing. Guess what? It's going to reduce incarceration amongst blacks. Because right away, one of the greatest things is when people get pulled over, they have no insurance. They either impound their vehicle or they probably have other outstanding tickets and they're going to go to jail. Do you see what I'm saying? Social issues, they do matter. But we are never given enough time to think about it because you're tired when you come home. And I feel that because the same thing that happens to you happens to me. I come home and you have to make dinner, figure out the next day, talk to your children. And by the time you're ready to hit the sack, you don't want to think anymore. You just want to sleep it off. And that's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to be so numb and so robotized and so robotic that we don't think. Because when we start thinking, we're going to start wanting solutions and we're going to make demands. So that's my 2 cents about that. So go to Rashida Tlaib's page and ask and support her. We do need to have better traction. We do need to have public policy that impacts our lives evenly, keep us on an even keel and impacts our lives profitably. Yes, the insurance companies will always make a profit. Insurance companies are never going to go broke. They never go broke. AIG claimed to have been belly up, but they had put most of their assets elsewhere back in 2008, right? That's 11 years ago now. Can you believe that? That was 11 years ago. But insurance companies are not going to go broke. So don't feel sorry for them. But we do need to have a level playing field. And as far as I'm concerned, especially with insurance, because it's required by law, imagine that. Then credit scores should not enter into the equation. And I think just for lights and water and heat, I don't think that should be a consideration at all. We need to make it so that the people can live, right? It will reduce frustration and it will reduce violence, because one thing we have learned, poverty, it's a cycle. I have a map. I did a diagram some years ago. It's somewhere out on the web. And I did a diagram that shows that poverty, the cycle of violence, poverty leads to anger, frustration, and the end result is violence. So to minimize violence, and I know a lot of people say, well, I live in a gated community, so it's not going to come to me. It's only a matter of time. But if you go out in the community and interact, you're going to encounter people who have issues. A lot of people who act out violently is because there's some things that they feel they can't control or they can't change, or they're working so hard to change it, or they're working 2 and 3 jobs to change it. Once upon a time, working a second or third job was a choice. Now it's par for the course. And if it is par for the course, what it is doing is it's telling people how to live. So people feel entirely hopeless. And we know where there is no hope, there's bound to be social activity. There's bound to be some civil activity, right? Because when people feel hopeless, they're being pushed and they will act out. They react violently. It's just like, let me say this before I move on. In a lot of the mass shooting cases that you see happen in workspaces, right? You and I can look at it and tell exactly why that person went in and shot the place up. He went in because what? He lost his job. Losing his job means what? He's going to lose his home, right? He's going to lose his livelihood, and he's going to lose his family, right? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live like that. So he's angry, frustration. He's angry because it's going to bring poverty. So he's angry, he's frustrated, and he resorts to violence. Inevitably, violence becomes the result of that. So we need to when other politicians are stepping up, because you don't when you are out in the public's eye and you're out in the public and you're advocating and you're putting your life on the line, right? And you're putting your integrity, your name, and your beliefs on the line, and you know there are people who support you, and regardless of whether you get support or not, because this is what you believe, you're still going to do it anyway, because you know there are some people who do. And it is very difficult for public persons and public profiles. Sometimes it helps when you show that you're with them. It helps when you stand with them. It's just like when the preacher is preaching. Don't you clap? You're encouraging him. You're making him know that what he's saying is your experience. It resonates with your experience, right? When you go to an event where a politician is speaking or some other person is speaking, you encourage them by clapping or being enthusiastic, or when they're done, you line up to shake their hands. What you're doing is reminding them and encouraging them that you appreciate them. Well, in this case, I'm asking for your support, because here in Michigan, insurance rates are ridiculous. It's the highest in the nation. It's unbelievable. And it needs to be addressed. And the insurance lobby has spent so many years making sure that their supporters, who are politicians, write legislation that benefits them. And it's time for a national application. We couldn't get it passed in Michigan, but if we do it at the federal level, then it becomes federal law, and then states will have to adopt it. That's the difference, right? So thank you so much for participating in that, because we need a change. We need a change. It's time for change. It's time for change, because if we don't do something about this, the conditions that people are enduring right now, it's going to slide. People are still working and earning $10 to $12 an hour, which is not a living wage. Here in the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Labor describes a living wage as earning $14.90 per hour. Then it went up to $15.27 per hour. So in order to pay rent at $700 and to live, someone should be working 40 hours a week at earning $15 an hour. So help me to understand what $12 an hour for 40 hours per week, and $10 an hour for 40 hours per week, how does that help someone? You see where the frustration is coming from? People have to live with family, and that's always never good, right? People have to live with other friends. That's always never good. They can't move forward with their lives, and so they become angry, right? And then they're going to act out, right? So we need to go to Rashida Tlaib, Rashid, Tlaib, Tlaib. She's the congresswoman from the 13th District of Michigan. Doesn't matter where you live. This is not just a Michigan thing. This is all over the country. So wherever you live in America, please, I ask you to go there and support her cause. Just hit up her page and say, Congresswoman, I stand with you on this insurance matter. So that because they're going to test the waters, and they're going to test public response and see how many people are going to respond to that. And I need your help, right? Because we've got to change this. Mass incarceration is a big deal. People not being able to afford insurance is a big deal. I'm seeing, so we had some scary, pretty freaky weather here a couple of weeks ago. There's so many cars driving around with broken front ends and so on, because the deductibles are so high. Sometimes you have to increase your deductible in order to make your monthly payment. So a standard deductible around here is $1,000, $1,500, right? Some people have deductibles of $2,000, $2,500. So if you hit your car in a fender bender, you're going to have to pay for that $1,500 deal out of your pocket. You're already earning just so much, so now you can't even get your car repaired. Do you see where I'm coming from? Yeah, we need to stop that. We need to stop that. And if you look at it historically, what you're beginning to see emerge is a pattern that throughout history, there's always this conversation about the rich and poor. It has not ended, and it's not likely to. But in the moment, while we are yet here right now, this is our moment to change it, not just for appeasement for ourselves, but for the next generation to pick up the mantle and carry the torch forward. We've got to keep marching until we change it. We can't just continue to let a few folks have all the wealth and the rest of us are enslaved to it, and people are killing themselves, literally killing themselves because they can't make it no matter what they do. We can't do that, right? So, in keeping with that, I want to talk about addictions. Hence the reason why people become addicted. Because how do people cope with these myriad of stuff going on? Let me just help you and show you what happens to humanity. So let's role play. And I can only talk about myself because I'm in my skin, right? So I'm female, I'm black, and I'm an immigrant, right? Those are my barriers. I wasn't born rich. That's the fourth one. So those are my barriers to overcome, right? Somebody else, they might be white and female. Being female is a barrier there, right? A black man is black. He's male, but he's a black man. He might not have any education, or even if he has education, he still has the significant barrier there of color that impacts him. A white male, well, depends on his education level, how far he can go. And even now, I'm seeing a lot of young white males who are just as frustrated because they're not able to buy what their parents used to have at that age. So they're delaying committed relationships, and they're delaying having children because they feel like they can't afford it. So a lot of young white males who have graduated college are saddled with student loan debt and who can't pay that back. So they're living with their parents. They can't move out because they don't earn enough to make a living wage. It takes 2 to 3 to 4 years before they can. And then inevitably they have to move somewhere that they may not like. Or they have to share an apartment with someone else because they can't afford to make the rent by themselves. And this is true for white males, black males, green males, red males, everybody. This is a reality of the fact. So how do people cope when you look at your life? You went to college, you went to high school, 4 years in high school. So you've been in school all your life, right? So the trajectory is such. You were born, you went to kindergarten, you went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and then college. So by the time you graduate college at 22, you've literally spent about 20 years of your life in school. So you graduate college, and now you're saddled with debt because you had to borrow some money, some loans to pay, to pay undergraduate. They've changed the laws, by the way. Going to professional school now is going to be even more expensive. Again, they're imposing more social restrictions on people because now it's going to cost you even more to go to professional school. So if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, it's almost going to be impossible to attain. Because lawyers and doctors tend to be high income earners, right? So who will be able to access those will continue to be white folks who have a higher rung up on generational wealth because their ancestors have been doing this for 400 years, whereas black folks, we only started acquiring affluence in the last 50 years. 400 years compared to 50 years, there's a big gap there, ain't it? Right? So when you look at this context, when you look at this in the big picture, what you're seeing happening is that people have reason to have issues. These social factors influence and affect their everyday life. They have reason to have issues. How do they cope with the issues? People drink, people smoke, they're trying to numb it away, right? And people do drugs. People use substances. Some people develop other proclivities, such as sex. Some people develop other things that land them in jail, like they become scammers, in an effort to stay concurrent. And even with some people who typically would be high income earners, some people are just not nice human beings, right? So they're still earning enough money, but there's never enough. So they steal. Well, they need to go to jail because you had enough to live more than a decent life, right? So, how are people coping? If they're doing substances, cocaine, heroin, crack is for poor people, heroin, meth has become an issue again. Hello, can you believe this? Meth and methamphetamine has become an issue again. Think just think about that. We thought we had that's why the government had meth labs everywhere and meth clinics for people to go and get, you know what I mean, and go and get their addictions treated. And here we are again. Folks, meth has become a thing again. I can't believe it, right? So people develop addictions or what I call attachments. In an effort to cope with everyday realities, people develop attachments. It becomes a way to cope, it becomes a crutch, something they lean on in order to deal with what they have to deal with. You know, when my daughter was in college, my oldest daughter is now almost done with learning. I swear. She is at her rope. Pray for her. Just stretch your hand out and pray for Alexandra, right? And one of the things I told her, because you're constantly studying, it gets to you. And I remember I said to her, don't develop anything though. So she has had to cope with this on her own wherewithal. Because I said, if you do it now, it's going to become a habit. So take, for instance, if somebody has issues, you go home and you sit down and you tell yourself, I worked so hard this week, I deserve this. And you reach for a glass of wine, right? After a while, half a glass is not enough. It becomes two. It becomes three. Then it becomes the whole bottle. Then suddenly wine is not strong enough. You move on to something else. People coming from work. So they're going to meet their friends at the bar to decompress and de-stress, right? And they meet their friends at the bar to enjoy happy hour. Happy hour is supposed to be an hour, but happy hour turns into hours because you develop an attachment to the drink because it numbs you out. You don't have to deal with anything. Then, of course, there are some folks who do cocaine because it just gives you a different kind of high. I have never met anyone who has confessed that they didn't think that they could handle cocaine. People will always tell you, it's nothing I can't handle. I can handle it. I'm in control of it. You're not in control of drugs. Those substances are addictive. And because they're addictive, they're going to form lifelong attachments that it's going to take you years to get out from under. In fact, what happens is you're compounding your issues. So if your issue was just life issue where you have to cope with the fact that, yeah, I went to college, I have a degree, but I'm not getting paid enough. And I still have these bills every month in America. The bills come every 15 days. Don't lie to me. It's not 28 days. It's every 15 days. I swear. You ever get a bill from Comcast or AT&T? Doesn't that thing look like it's every 14 or 15 days? I'm just saying, right? So the bills come every 21 days, right? And so you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the boss at work. You have to deal with your spouse. You have children. You have to plan your life out. Some of us are taking care of aging parents while raising children. That was my story for a while. I was raising children at the same time that I was taking care of my mother, right? And now you have all that to cope with. So you develop an attachment. There's some people who keep liquor in their bedrooms. I swear to you, I've seen it. I have seen it with my own two eyes. Took a bottle of whiskey into the room. When I went into the room, she had 2 bottles of wine in there. I was like, no, baby, no, 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 no. And she says, what am I supposed to do? So I said, well, how do you get up and go to work in the morning? She said, I go to work. Same person goes out in her car and takes a puff of weed. And I'm just like, and then she says, how do you cope? And I'm like, by prayer and supplication. And she's like, that doesn't work for me. And I'm like, it is what it is. Do you see where I'm coming from? So now so people recognize they have issues, so they're trying to cope. And they go through these methods, right? It's not their fault. And in a way, we're all saying, well, Harriet, don't pick on them. I'm not picking. I'm going to set you free because you're going to understand. Once you understand why you do it, it's easier for you to seek that you will get help. Because here's the thing, once this thing starts in you, the chemicals in your body develop an attachment to the substance, whether it's alcohol, whether it's coke, whether it's heroin, whether it's meth, whether it's opioids, prescription pills. That is like American kids are just popping pills. I mean, my daughter tells me that there was a thing floating, I think it was on YouTube, where because the pills look like Skittles, right? The different colors, they had to create something to make kids stop taking because it was like they were popping candy. They were taking all these chemicals into their bodies and they're just numbing the pain out. The kids were trying to get high. Well, why do you want to get high? Isn't life okay? I think life is a high enough. But we have a problem. Our problem is how strong are our coping mechanisms. Our lack of coping mechanisms is what causes us to become addicted. And we in a way, it's kind of like not your fault that these societal pressures happen or exist. So it's not your fault. It's also really shouldn't be your bailiff to determine what do I need to do this, to survive this, right? But here we are, right? Here we are. Here we are trying to survive something, right? So what do you do when you discover that, wait a minute, I actually do need to take a drink to fall asleep at night. I actually have to take a sniff of cocaine to get up in the mornings and go to work. In a few months, you are so addicted, you have destroyed yourself. It's very quick. The process of deterioration is quick. It makes you angry, irritable, irascible. You can't be around people. You can't maintain your focus. You act out in spaces where you shouldn't. You can't keep your composure. You're spending money you don't have. You're gambling your family's future away. And we didn't even talk about that big G. The big G is gambling. How many people think it was innocent to go on the internet and play numbers? How many of you play cards for numbers? How many of you start betting on the internet because it's anonymous? And before you know it, you're in hook, line, and sinker, and your entire paycheck is gone to a gambling debt. I heard a story some years ago. I have stories to tell like you wouldn't believe. I was talking to my kids last night, and they're like, Mom, these stories. I heard a story years ago that happened to someone I know. Her mother had a gambling issue, and her mother suckered her into it. It started with something as innocent as that game everybody plays, bingo. And when the casinos started, the mother went down there and brought the daughter with her. The daughter opened an account with the casino. Did you know stuff like that happen where you leave your debit card? So you have a debt. So when you get paid, the casino captures your money first. We prayed about that because it became a problem. You see what I'm saying? And some of us take gambling. I tell you the honest truth, true confession. I bought the lottery one time in my life. I think it was a couple months ago when the Powerball was like $1 billion. I said, okay, Harriet, for 30 years you've been saying you would never buy it, and you've always said it's a game of chance. Prove to me, therefore, that it is not. I went and bought it, and it is a game of chance. I didn't win. I didn't even check the numbers. I didn't even check it. And I was like, see, some people are addicted to gambling. You're addicted to playing the lottery. So you go to play the lottery. Can you believe that? Instead of buying gas, you go and play the lottery. Some people are addicted to cigarettes. You smoke 5 packs a day. So all your available disposable income is eaten up with your habit. That's the problem. We develop these attachments that become habitual because after 30 days, it becomes a habit. And then a habit is harder to break. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, they used to have that nursery rhyme about don't a habit. I can't remember the strain of it, but the idea behind it was that if you develop something, it becomes a habit, and then a habit is harder to break. So I kind of stored that in the back of my mind and tried not to develop habits. True confession, I had a thing for shopping. When the going gets tough, the tough when shopping. Don't laugh, don't laugh. That was my thing. Retail therapy all day, every day. Stuff hits the ceiling and hits the fan on me. I'm like, have wheels, will drive, to the mall we go. That's why they're closing malls. Right? And I would hit it. And I would sometimes what I would do is I would go home and I'm like, okay, you're returning all this stuff. And the next day I would have to go back and return it. But then I'd say, maybe you should keep it. Maybe it's not so bad after all. So I figured out how I was going to break that habit. You know how I was going to break it? Guess. I go to the mall, I go to the store, and I pick up everything that I like. I walk around, and in my mind, I'm imagining how it's going to look, feel, and so on. But you see, when it comes to that moment to go up to the cash register and cash out, oh, baby, I put them all back. That's how I broke that habit. I had to tell myself that it was a bad habit that was destructive. And that's what you have to tell yourself. This is for somebody who is addicted. This is not for everyone, right? But you have to come clean with yourself. Physician, heal thyself. You have to first admit that you have a problem. And if you don't admit to yourself that there is a problem, you will not accept any kind of relief. You will not accept resources. You will not accept anyone helping because you're not going to accept that you have a problem. The first step is to say, this is a problem for me. Once you get to that point, then it becomes easier for you to open up and receive. Have you ever been to an AA meeting? You know why they are successful? They encourage people to do what? Accept that there is a problem and open up. You listen to others. It gives you strength when you are tempted. And you have to constantly remind yourself that this temptation exists. Part of why we fail overcoming addictions is because we tell ourselves that we're stronger than the addiction. That's not true. The addiction is a force and it's like a magnetic force. That's why you don't introduce it to yourself in the first place, because the minute you do, you have created a habit with it and you've created a connection with it. And that connection is dangerous. Now you can't break it. It's in you and it is greater than you. Once it gets in you, it's greater than you. And now to break that addiction requires stronger tools. But first, we have to overcome ourselves. Because to admit to myself that there is a force greater and stronger than me that I have allowed in that is destructive, I'm not going to admit that. But yet, it is the first step. We have to admit that. If you have a proclivity, for instance, some people have proclivities that they can't talk about. But I can talk about them. You don't have to. Some people have proclivities with pornography. That's a straight up addiction, straight up. Some people can't enjoy sex without porn. It has not occurred to them that they can look at someone, feel inclined to having sex with a person, and go work the work to get the person sexually, aroused enough or get themselves aroused to do it without porn. Then once they start looking at porn, they start looking at pictures of girls. Then they start looking at pictures of younger and younger girls till they end up in that dangerous field of child pornography. Hello? Are we there yet? Yeah. then some people have other proclivities. There are things you have never accepted about yourself that you probably like. If you are male, you probably think sometimes of having sex with a man. That's a proclivity. You've never acted out on it because you are afraid of societal pressure. But you have your phone, so you go online and you get addicted to watching another man having sex with a man. The same thing works for women. You have a proclivity. You probably experimented one time, but then you became afraid because it was such a force or a magnetic force that pulled you into it that you were afraid of it because of societal pressure. But you have a proclivity to watching girls having sex with one another online. And it's destroying your relationship. And it's destroying you because you are not accepting that I have this. When it comes to sex, come clean with yourself. That's so personal. You know, sex is very personal. You know that, right? Come clean with yourself. I tell let this help you. What triggers you sexually is what it is. Accept it. Deal with it. Keep it moving. You can't change that. There is no conversion therapy. There's no way you can think yourself into it. Accept it. What triggers you sexually is what it is. A gay male sex worker told me his biggest clients are straight men or men who act like they're straight, but who go to gay male sex workers seeking oral sex or anal sex, often without condoms. What does that tell you? People have unresolved issues. So sexual addiction, come clean with it. There are people who are promiscuous. That means they destroy themselves. They have sex with everybody all the time, even to the destruction of their marital relationships. Those are folks who have never accepted that they have an issue. Sometimes with men, when you see a guy who's just running from woman to woman, he has a problem. He was probably sexually attacked when he was a kid by a male. And he's trying to prove that he's so masculine. He's flirting with everybody, destroying himself and relationships in the process. Come clean. Just come clean. Tell yourself, are you ready? We're ready for this? Just tell yourself, it's me. Look in the mirror and say it's me. I'm looking at the camera, right? So I can see you. Just say, it's me. I have this issue. I need help. And I want to get better. And I will, but I need your help. Ask yourself for permission and forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for reaching for that bottle the first time. Forgive yourself for picking up that weed the first time. Forgive yourself for taking that first sniff of coke. Forgive yourself for guzzling everything you've worked for, destroying your professional reputation, destroying your relationships, destroying everything. Forgive yourself. Forgive. That's the second step. And now, go get help. Put your shoulder to the wheel. Understand that it is a process. Say process. Process. No, in Britain, they say process. That's how I grew up. Process. Say process. It's going to be a process, but you have to be set free. I don't know who I'm talking to. I think you're over here, Facebook. You might be here too. But I can feel you here. You're pulling on me. And it's okay. And if you find yourself crying at how the addiction has hurt your life, let it out. Cry it out. Let it come all out. Because sometimes we have allowed it to go on because we didn't get help, because we were afraid of what people would say. We were afraid of how we would react when we don't have that trigger. Some of you have triggers with food. Food addiction. Can't drive past a McDonald's without pulling in for a Big Mac, right? Some people have serious food addiction because they have an issue. I kid you not. The root cause of all these addictions is always an emotional thing. Where public policy intersects with our lives and where societal pressure, you have pressure from home, financial pressure, it all comes down to being emotional. Because it is you telling yourself, I can't get out from under this. I can't solve this. So you start thinking of ways to cope with it. You see where I'm coming from? The root cause always comes from something emotional. This is why it's important to never say negative things to yourself about you. Because the minute you start telling yourself that, you stop focusing on the solutions and you focus on the issue. Never focus on the obstacle. The three O's: obstacles, opposition, those things create opportunity. Look at them and say, well, what is the opportunity in this? You remember when we were studying economics and they taught us about opportunity cost? Literally, that's how you have to think. What's the opportunity here? Right? Think about it. But if you focus on the obstacle, my God, it's the middle of the month and I have all these bills to pay. I have $5,000 worth of bills and I have $4,000. How is that going to work? You're focusing too much on the obstacles. Focus on the opportunity. You know what the opportunity is? You can pay some of those bills, get busy and pay them, and give thanks. You will sleep better tonight. Because when you think like that, you're going to think some more about, maybe I can do this. Maybe I don't need to live in such a big house. Maybe the mortgage is too high. Can I get a refinance? Maybe I need to move into a smaller house. Maybe I don't need to drive this kind of car. Maybe I should trade it in and get a smaller car. You see where I'm coming from? When you focus on the opportunities that exist in obstacles, you're going to find solutions. But if you continue to focus on the obstacle, what you're doing is robbing yourself and sending you further into decline. And these things invariably create depression. And man, as someone who has come out of depression caused by grief, Jesus, I would not wish it on my worst enemy. I don't want to see you go into it because that stuff is like a fog. I understand how people take drugs and opioids to come out of depression. Because when I went through it after my mother died, Jesus, take the wheel. It was like a fog, people. I couldn't think. Everything was just blimey. If that was an opportune time for me to develop attachments and habits, it could have been. I was trying to talk myself off the ledge. That's why you didn't see me much. I was not there on Facebook because I was like, what's the point? I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to see anybody's face. I don't want to do this. I was focusing on the obstacle instead of looking at the opportunity. You know what was the opportunity for me? This too shall pass. I'm going to get over it. I'm going to learn to live with it. It's two ways. I'm either going to get over it completely, where I forget about it, or I'm going to learn to live with it. I didn't look at the opportunity. I looked at the obstacle, that my mother was gone. Gosh, she is going to go. That's the circle of life, right? Parents die before children, hopefully. You see what I'm saying? Focus on the opportunity. You've got to change the way you look at things. We tend to stare. It's like, have you ever been driving down the street and the sun, you're driving into the setting sun, or you're driving into the rising sun, and you stop looking at the road ahead and you're staring into the sun. And the more you stare into it is the more you focus on it. And you're like, wow, there are colors in that thing. You forget about what you're supposed to be looking at the road ahead until somebody honks their horn. You got caught up in looking at it. And you're like, every morning I come out, the sun is in my eyes. I put on sunglasses. I pull down my, the thing in the car, the thing that hides the sun. You're like, I put a tint across the car, but the sun is still. Don't focus on the obstacle. If you stare into that stuff, you will lose. You lose your compass bearing. Focus on the opportunity. Focus on how am I going to get out of this. I told you were going to be set free. And this is personal because it's happening to you. And until I had experienced depression, I could talk about it. I've seen what it has done to people. But until I walked through it and had to fight my way out of it, and I was not going to use chemicals, I was not going to take any pills. My doctor said, well, you want some antidepressants? No, thank you. Well, you're going to talk to someone? Yeah, I'm in counseling. I had to walk it out. Have I had issues in life? Look at me. Don't you think? I'm just so happy that my face is not a roadmap of the issues that I've faced. I worked really hard at it. But do I have issues? Yeah. Do I have disappointments every day? Do I have stuff going on all the time? But I had to develop a mental toughness that nicks away stuff. I don't have to think about that today. I don't have to deal with that today. Frankly, I'm not going to deal with that at all. Here's what I'm going to focus on right now. This too shall pass became my methodology. It became my mantra. I've had to gather my children together and say, look, we're going to get out of this. Walk with me here. Work with me. Some people are going, when you hit these kids, as I call it, gather your family together. Remind them why you're a family unit and tell them we're all in this together. We're going to work it out. It's going to work out. It's going to end and it's going to come back to normal, or tell them we're going to find a way out of it. Give them hope. You come home and they just fired you. That is enough to send people reeling. The first thing you're going to do is reach under the sink or in the cupboard or in your closet. People store stuff in the fridge. You're going to reach for that bottle. Before you reach for the bottle, take pen and paper and sit down and take stock of everything that is going on. And then come up with, that's the plan right there. Gather your family together and tell them. It's the hardest thing to do is to go home and tell your family, especially when you're the only breadwinner, to go home and tell your family that you cannot make it anymore because you lost your job is the hardest thing that you could do. Trust me. Been there. I had to figure out, how am I going to tell my kids? My oldest daughter was getting ready to go to college. It was in April of 2011. I lost my full-time job. My oldest daughter was about to graduate high school in 2 months and start college in August. How was I going to go home and tell them that the plan had fallen apart? I had to. We knew it was going to end. It was a slope. And sometimes when these things happen, you enter into what I call the skids and a slope, and it's a downward spiral. How you arrive down there is up to us, literally. You can either arrive down there broken, disheveled, or you can arrive down there on your feet and say, all right, well, from here on up, the only way up is up. The only way out is up. I have to figure out how to do this. And you remind yourself of your own gifts and talents. You say, I'm strong, I'm smart, we're going to figure this out. We're going to have to make some adjustments, right? There's some things I had to go home and tell my children. There's some things we can't do anymore. The things we used to take for granted. We used to go out to eat weekly. Can't do that anymore. Can't get our nails done anymore. Have to reduce trips to the beauty parlor because you can only do that when it's absolutely necessary. Couldn't go shopping anymore just because it was something to that we enjoyed. Couldn't go on trips anymore. Couldn't do this anymore on a whim. Right? Had to make adjustments. I have this much. I've always been very honest with my children. I have this much money and I have these many bills. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where I'm at. You have to sit down and talk to your family. Get their cooperation. Yes, they're going to fight, especially if you have teenagers. Lord Jesus. American teenagers are the angriest people on the face of the earth. They are so angry. Our children, our precious little babies whom we loved, grow up to be angry teenagers. American teenagers, it's a nightmare. They never get enough. They never have enough. No matter how much wealth and privilege you have, they never have enough. They're always fighting with their parents. They never get enough freedom. They never get enough money. They never get enough trips. Then they want to go this. They want to do that all at the same time. And the parents are like, but I gave you this. I gave you that. I gave you this. I gave you that. Blah, 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 blah. You throw stuff at them and it's still never enough. Never. American teenagers are very angry. It's a walk. Literally a walk of faith. Like literally. Right? So imagine going home, but God. So imagine going home and having to tell them that life is about to change, that life has changed. What about you're working and you've been at this company for some time and they have realigned and your position is gone? And they say, well, you can stay here, but you're going to earn 2/3 less or 1/3 less of what you used to earn. Your bills are here and now you're going to earn this. So you have to go home and have this conversation with your intimate family. Don't pick up the bottle. Don't pick up the powder. Don't watch porn. That's not going to help. Don't take Molly. You know, the mix of drugs that they mix together. Don't call Molly. Don't sip her. Don't take Molly. Right? Definitely don't go shopping. Back off a little bit. But what we do is have a conversation. Because if we develop an addiction, we are compounding the problems that were the base of the problem in the first place. Right? I can tell you that because I am the living witness of what I am telling you. Friends, look at me. Friends, look at me. By the grace of God, I did not develop an addiction because it would have been destructive because I was the only parent my 2 children have. I had to keep it together for their sake. I was devastated when I lost my job. Totally devastated. And I had to figure it out. I had to sit there. I told myself I had 24 hours to cry. Because after the 24 hours, you got to figure this stuff out. I didn't have a choice. And then I didn't have my own home. I lived in an apartment. Holy cow, what you going to do? I had car note, an apartment. So I made adjustments. Now I own my own home. Maybe not in the neighborhood I want to be in, but at least I own it. Say, hey, I never have to worry about a mortgage. So nobody is ever going to come knock on my door and post an eviction notice or post that I owe them mortgage. Ain't never gonna happen. I own my own car. So nobody's ever going to drive around looking for my car in the middle of the night. Ain't going to happen. Do you see where I'm coming from? This is why I'm advocating and saying to you, make the adjustments now, especially when you start climbing the ladder and you get to 40 and 45 and 50. That's not the time to accelerate in debt. That's the time to decelerate. That's the time to start trimming the tree and start trimming the exposure. The minute you turn 40, is when you shift. That's a dynamic shift because your hormones have changed now. And when your hormones change, your perspectives change. And some of us are looking at your friends whom you went to college with and high school with, and you're looking at how they're just moving through life and you want to be just like them. Stop it. Focus on what matters. You have to live in a real world. What if the company shuts down? What if they fire me? What if they sometimes they don't want to fire you, but they delete your job? They delete your whole department. What do you do? Am I likely to get a job that is going to pay me as much? Not necessarily so. In fact, almost no. The other day, GM fired, what was it, 12,000 mid-management people who had been there, or 5,000 people who had been there for over 12 years, right? Companies like Beaumont here in Michigan said they were going to do a hiring spree and hire some of those people. I guarantee you that the perks and benefits that they enjoyed at GM, they were not going to get somewhere else. Adjustments had to take place. I know there was plenty of crying and God bless America and some of that, and people were cursing and swearing. I know because I've been there. I lived in a 16th floor apartment. I don't know how I didn't throw anything through the window. I had to sit there and say, what on earth am I going to do? I was midlife at the time. Hello. All of us have had to face it. Some of us are just more transparent than others. I have. Some people own businesses and there's been a contraction in business and they have had to adjust their lifestyle. Some people have more layers between them and disaster, so it takes longer to show. But the more the economic situation continues, is the more their layers begin to disappear. You see where I'm coming from? So some people you're like, man, they're still rich. It's been 10 years. Yeah, because they've had 10 years of layers. But it will eventually show. They're making adjustments. You just can't see it. Do you see where I'm coming from? So be smart, be proactive, get in front of it. Listen to what's going on in the company. You can tell that they're going to close. Companies don't just close overnight. You heard the rumblings. We just refuse. Because when the company finally changed hands, this is in April. I had heard about it from December. I just refused to believe it because I was like, what the hell am I going to do? I should have become proactive. It was like I was frozen in place. You see where I'm coming from? And that cost me. But for the grace of God, I could have turned to the bottle or anything else, but I couldn't because I had two pairs of eyes looking at me and they had nobody else and nowhere else to go but to me. So I had to keep me together for me and for them. Do you see what I'm coming from? Talk about grace, the grace to endure. Man, alive. Do you see why I have to talk about God? That is why I come to you and I share this with you because I've been there. I know what it is like. I know how it feels. I know how opportunities come and go. I know how people look at you and think that they're in a better place than you because they're getting a paycheck every 2 days or every 2 weeks or whatever. And I'm looking at them like, you have not a clue. I have seen people who have had a business for 15 years, right? And who something, the economy changed, the society changed, social change happened. And now they're fighting to start another business because that one is dying. Not because they didn't do anything right, not because they didn't save money. No, because the society changed. People don't want that kind of industry anymore. And now they have to go figure out another whole other way to make a living. And it's terrifying them because they've become accustomed to a certain way of life. They've become accustomed to just making money just like that. And now they're like, oh my God, Harriet. And I'm like, welcome to my world. So you want to do this? This is what it costs. Are you ready for this? Do you see what I'm saying? Sometimes we see folks and we judge books by their covers and we don't try to understand and assimilate. It's not easy, baby. It's not easy. And I kid you not, I'm going to be honest with you. I am not angry at the things that happened to me. I have taken them for what they are. They were learning experiences. They taught me a lot. But I have come to accept them and I have come to thank them because they gave me opportunities. When they fired me from my full-time job, I was working full-time. I had my consulting business on the side. And at the same time, I was trying to establish myself as a writer and speaker. There were only so many hours in a day, right? So I would go home by 6, 7 o'clock in the evenings and make dinner and then spend up until 1 o'clock try to work on my future goals. You see, when they fired me full time, you know what it forced me to do? I had to come and concentrate on Harriet Kamek Media and the Exodus Foundation. Those were just dreams, but now I didn't have a choice. I had to focus on it. I had to figure it out and build it brick by brick. So I look at those things now as opportunity. They seemed like obstacles and they were opposition to my way of life at the time, to a way of life that I had ascribed to, that I believed should have been. So I had to learn the lessons. I didn't like it, not one bit. Did I like it? I didn't say I liked it. I didn't say that. I said I lived with it. I came to accept it and live with it. So I want you to do me a favor. You've heard my story. You've heard this. What causes addictions? And nobody's setting free because now you know. So I want you to do me a favor, right? I want you to start planning. It's not about anticipating bad news, it's about being realistic. We come to a certain stage in life where anything can happen anytime. Accept that. Accept that there are things that can happen outside of your control. Accept that. Make plans for it. Sit down and look at your household budget. Sit down and look at your life. What are the priorities? Make sure they're established between you, your spouse, and your family. Make adjustments. Always put money away. Make adjustments. Make adjustments. Do we really need to live in this big house? The mortgage here is $1,500 a month, $1,700 a month, $2,500 a month, $3,500 a month. Do we really need to live here? Make adjustments because you never know what can happen. Do you know that one illness can wipe you out? What if someone gets ill? What you gonna do? And is that a reality of life? You bet it is. Mom got sick and she had long-term insurance, long-term, whatever the thing is called, right? It took 3 months to kick in. Did you hear me? 3 months. In the interim, she still had bills. What if she had a car note and a house note? She would have lost her house and her car in the 3 months that it takes for the long-term plan to kick in. Hello? Do you see where I'm coming from? Stuff like this we don't think about. So I'm asking you, plan and think. I never thought the day would come when I wouldn't have a full-time job. I didn't think that life really would change after 45, but it did. I was happy that I had started this. So I had to start looking at the opportunity and say, you have to build it and take it further. Maybe this is not for you because maybe you work somewhere where they're going to keep you until you're 65 or 70 and you're going to retire. So you're like, I'm good either way. Until some new company rule comes up and they parcel you out somewhere and plant you behind a desk that you just sit there. And while you're sitting behind the desk, you start thinking about stuff and you develop some kind of illness and boom, that's it. Start thinking and planning. And if as a result of these societal pressures that are external to your control and mine, that have caused you to develop addictions, I ask you, accept it. Just say, it's me. Lord, it's me. Help me. Please. This has come up and I need your help. Help me. And then say thank you. And your help will come just like that. Yes, it does. Ideas will start coming into your head. You open yourself to receive. So you start thinking differently and you start looking at opportunities. I have become a master at budgeting. I have learned to defray that, delay that, deflect that, do this over here, do that. Think like a mile a minute. Walk into PNC Bank like boss. Right? Avoiding and deflecting costs and opportunity costs and fees and yeah. It gets real. And for some of you, I'm praying for you especially because you have had so many layers between you and disaster that when it finally hit, it's taking you a while to see it because you can't believe it because you couldn't think it could ever happen to you. And yet it is. I prayed for you. So, as usual, you are going to take a deep breath. Exhale. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Take a deep breath in on the count of 3. I'm going to count down. 3, 2, 1. That's your release. You are released. You're free. You're free from that addiction. It has no more power to hold you because now you have shined the light of victory on it. You have shined the light of truth on why you got addicted in the first place. Why did this become a chain that bound you and held you and kept you down. For some of us, our addictions are so bad we can't even look at ourselves in the mirror. We stop dressing right. We stop looking right. We stop talking right. We stop being ourselves because the addiction became a chain. You are set free today. Now you understand why. Now you have found your power back. It's you all along. It was you all along. The power to change, the power to accept the change, the power to make the change was you all along. That addiction told you that it was in charge, it was greater than you. But now you know the truth. It's you. So, yes, problems are going to come. All day, every day. They will never stop. But you can look at that bottle, you can look at that powder, flush it down the toilet, and tell it, you know what? You don't have any power over me anymore. You're going to feel like it. It's going to drive you crazy. Do you know that why police are insistent on arresting people who use substances? It's going to prison for some people or going to jail is a kind of detox. Because what it does is it forces them to come to grips with the fact that you're not going to have this drug to be dependent on. They go crazy. Have you ever seen them in jail? I've seen some of the footage. It drives people crazy when they're fighting to get out of the addiction. But the end result is that they come clean and they're normal and human again. Right? And that's what you need. So I'm going to ask you, decrease so that the power within you can increase. Right? Find your power back, bring it back. The power to think clearly, because you haven't been able to think because of the fog of addiction over you. You can't think. Commit to the process of change. That's your thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's not like you haven't been there. That's your thing. Didn't commit to the process. Commit to the process of change. That's your strength. It's going to help you walk it out step by step. They gave you a step, right? Didn't they? They gave you a program. Walk it out step by step. Walk it out. Walk it out. It will work. It's because of you I can't shut down. I'm trying to leave. Like you won't let me go. Because you're still saying, there's something else you need to tell me that will set you free. You will be free. You will be free. God has set you free this day. There's a song. Go look it up on YouTube. Just play it for whatever it does to you. It says, there is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood, wash all their guilt, their stains away. There is a fountain. Go sing that song. Go play that song. It will help you. God provides. Go ahead. I had to walk on water. I walked on water, me and 2 children. You think there was a man lined up who was just suddenly going to, I'm here. That didn't work for me. That was not in the plan. Say it wasn't in the plan. It was not in the plan. It didn't work for me. But you know what worked? I had to walk it out. I had to learn the lessons. And let me just, before I go, I feel like there's somebody, you're blaming yourself for what happened to you. As a result of one of your proclivities, you had a proclivity, whether it was for men or women, whether it was for booze, or whether it was for sex, or whether it was porn that was your thing, or drugs, substance, for somebody here, yeah, you. You lost everything. You lost your status. You lost your position in the society. You even might have gone to jail, that you were threatened with jail time. You had to work out a deal to keep yourself out of it. As a result of your addiction, your proclivity, it destroyed you. And you have not forgiven yourself. It's been years. It's been some time. And you haven't let it go. You haven't forgiven yourself. And you keep going back to what was. Even though your family you're blessed because they've kind of come to grips with it, with the change. But you are still saying, if I hadn't done that, this would not have happened. Forgive yourself. Let it go. Forgive yourself. Whatever it was, whatever it was, let it go. This is why deal with the issue. Like I said, if your proclivity is something sexual, deal with it real quick. Deal with it, deal with it, deal with it, deal with it, deal with it. It's not worth what that proclivity is going to take you through if you don't fix it. It's not worth it. Right? Deal with it. Dr. Simpson, you just put up a thing on YouTube. Right? Deal with it. Because you have to deal with it. Right? It's amazing, friends. It's amazing. Sometimes we, how shall I say this delicately? Sometimes we obviate ourselves and rob ourselves of the pleasure of learning from others. Some of us will not engage with people who are younger or older than we are. And sometimes some of you guys, this is for a guy out there, I think, you need to be with someone closer to your own age. There's some wisdom you're going to learn from that. That is the strength you need. And for you wrap yourself up thinking if you're with someone younger, it's going to keep your youth and vitality. And that person is going to keep you straight. That person does not have the strength that you need. Let it go. You need to go. You need to let that go real quick. It will destroy you and you will pay the price. You might even lose your family business in it. Right? Be with someone who is closer to your age. They have wisdom and strength. That is what you need. The song. You found the song? Okay, so if you look at the thread right now on Facebook, Dr. James Simpson has posted the song, There is a Fountain Filled with Blood, drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood. Wash all their guilty stains. It's a song, people. It's a song. Listen to the song. The words of it are cleansing, and it's going to help you to focus on something bigger than yourself. Often when we come into these situations, we're so contracted. We focus only on us and we don't focus on the big picture. There is always a big picture. The big picture is hope. We gotta have hope. Don't lose your hope. Please, I'm begging you. Don't lose your hope. Hold on. Hold on. It will change. Your morning will come. You don't believe me? Yes, it does. I thought I was some super chick, right? I forget that I'm female, right? And that I have a finite timeline. So Harriet decides to clean out the garage. So I get the handyman and he's saying, no, don't touch anything, leave everything. No, I'm going to try to move stuff because I wanted to move faster because I had something to do, right? Well, okay, so I started to feel a little thing in my back, in my upper back, right? And I'm like, that's no big deal. So by the end of the night, my back was killing me. So I started to do the exercise, the yoga moves to erase the pain. Wasn't working. And then I am female. I have carried children. So my youngest daughter, I had an epidural to have her. I had to have one. The needle that they use to stick into your spine is about as long, like it's as long as this band, right? Because and your spine has only 3 places where there is a hole in it to accommodate this stuff. So on the 3rd try, they found the hole in my spine that this needle that contained the drug to relieve me of the birthing pain, because I was going to die. They said that it was so bad. I didn't know if they didn't think I was going to make it or the baby was going to be normal, even if she made it to be born. It was horrible. I forgot that I'm female. So while I'm busy in the garage, when I decided to go to bed, I was going to pray, right? I found myself going on my knees and right in the place where I got the epidural. Oh my goodness, the pain was so massive. It was so sore. I almost cried. Tears. That's how bad it felt. So I was like, okay, going to bed. Wake up in the morning, I'll be fine. I woke up the next morning, I could hardly make it out of bed. I rolled. I'm like, I've never rolled out of bed in my entire life. I'm one of those persons who sit up, just sit up, but you know, all day Tuesday, that pain never left. I learned a lesson. I was humbled, wasn't I? Yeah, I was humbled. It reminded me of my limitations, right? So then I had to go back to myself and say, okay, so let's remind ourselves where our strengths are. And our strength definitely is not lifting or pushing or pulling. Okay. That was just a lesson for me. So I leave you with that one. Know your limitations. If you have an addiction to chemical substances, don't go in an environment where that exists. If you have oh Jesus, this is going to hurt. If you have an addiction to booze, go empty every bottle in your house. My ex-husband was an alcoholic. You know what he kept? He kept alcohol everywhere. He had a bottle this tall filled with Johnny Walker Black Scotch whiskey. He had Remy Martin by the case. Remy Martin is a brandy. Is it? Yeah, it's a brandy, right? Right. He drank only Remy Martin. Go figure. Not even Hennessy, y'all. Remy Martin was like how many dollars a bottle, whatever. That's what he drank. And then when that wasn't enough, he would drink Jamaican white rum, 150 proof, alcohol proof. He would drink that stuff with coconut water. He was an alcoholic. He kept alcohol. No matter how I tried to tell him to stop, he wouldn't stop. It had gotten him. It held him. You know when he stopped? When he and I got divorced. He called me 3 years later to tell me that the doctors told him that if he had one more drink, he would drop dead. That's what it took for him to stop. We were already divorced. I said, I tried to tell you. So if you have addictions to shopping, don't go to the mall. If you have addictions to prescription drugs, flush them. Don't hide them because your mind knows they're there. So you kind of keep it that just in case you feel like you can't cope, you'll just leave. No, it will start the addiction all over again. I don't know. I was supposed to close, but this just came up. Flush it. Flush out all the addictive substances in your home. Get rid of every one of them. Go home right now. Flush them out. Take them all out. All of them. Get rid of every one of them. Addictive behavior patterns, cycles. Get rid of them. Right? Get rid of all of them. Addicted to negative thoughts, especially when life has hit you. We have a cycle of pattern that we fall into of negative thought. It's a whole body of negative thought, and you keep thinking it. It's not helping you because in this life, you have to think your way through it. All these things, it's how you think that matters. And how you think is how you're going to get out of it. Think your way out of it. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Don't focus on that. Focus on how you think about you. How you feel about you, how you think about you is what's going to make the difference. When I lost my full-time job, my family members, especially my mother's children, laughed at me because they thought that I had met my comeuppance. And finally, I was being leveled and taught a lesson. But I was smiling because to me, the end of it would speak and it wouldn't lie. And I was sure that I was going to win in the end. But there was a process to go through. And during the process, they looked like they were winning. But life, the race of life is not given to the swift, but to those who endure. You know what I'm sure of? I have the strength to endure. I don't think they can. So one day, I said to them both, the stuff I've survived would kill you. You could never go through the stuff I survived. I said, you would end up in a mental hospital. You would end up on drugs. So don't laugh. Because what I have survived, take it as a lesson so that it doesn't happen to you. Because you could not survive what I walked through. I never heard them say another negative thing again. Because it is true. So when you look at all the stuff that caused you to have these addictions, tell yourself, the stuff I have survived would kill someone else. I had the strength to endure. That's you. You're strong. You have endurance. You're breaking my heart because I feel you, because it wasn't easy. But you know what? You're still here. Yeah, many times you called it quits. Many times you gave up. But you're still here. You're still here. So celebrate yourself. Give yourself a clap. You made it this far. You're going to make it. The rest, as they say, is history. Right? Right? Take a deep breath. It's going to be all right. I promise you. I feel like somebody is holding on to me just to get you through the next 2 minutes. I'll stay with you just to get through the next 2 minutes. I pray right now that you get the strength you need to make it through this day. Focus on this day. Stay here this day. Just this day. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just today. Today. For today. Strength for today. Overcoming addiction is a daily process. You realize that. It's not something that happens overnight. Set a plan. Have a plan that by the end of 1 month, at the end of 60 days, the end of 90 days, you'll be here. At the end of 1 year, 2 years. But understand that every day you number the days. Day number 1, day number 2. Write it down what you're experiencing that day. It's going to take you some time to get through it. That's okay. You have all the time in the world. Time is relevant. Don't let anybody tell you that you're 50 or 60 or 70. Time is irrelevant. There's only one person time matters to. He who created time. And what does he say? A day unto the Lord is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. What that tells you, time is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. There's no timeline on your deliverance. There's no timeline on you overcoming addiction. Don't force yourself into, oh my God, I have to make this in 30 days, in 60 days, otherwise. No. When it comes to this, time is irrelevant. What matters here is the result. It doesn't matter how you start. What matters is how you finish. Finish well. Do you see what I'm saying? Did it matter that when I started, I was a single mother with 2 children? Did it matter that I came from another country to come here? Did all that matter? Nobody has ever asked me where you went to school. Nobody has ever asked me you know what they ask? How did you get here? How did you do this? Can you show me how? That's what matters. Doesn't matter how you start. What matters is how you finish. The finished product, the result, that's all you need to focus on. Focus on the result. Focus on the fact that this too shall pass. Strengthen yourself. Tell yourself every day, I am debt free. I am liquor free. I am booze free. I am whiskey free. I am coke free. I am dope free. I am heroin free. I am sex free. Whatever your proclivity is. I won't look at another picture of 2 men having sex. I won't look at another picture of 2 women having sex. I won't look at another picture of people having sex with children. Whatever your proclivity is, tell yourself every day, this is day number 4, I am free. Day number 5, I'm free. Day number 6, I'm free. Day number 130, I'm free. Day number 500, I am free. Celebrate it every day and humble yourself. That humility is what saves you. Because the minute you become arrogant, like, I don't have to do this, no, I don't need to do this, that's when you get whipped. Humble yourself and tell yourself, you know something? I got to let this go. I need this. I need the strength. There's some things in my life that I accept about me that I don't have the strength for. There's just some things that I just don't. You understand what I'm saying? So what I do, I learn to humble myself, right? And in learning to humble myself, I accept my limitations. So I don't try to be super duper. Like, I had to find my limitation Monday night. You can't push or pull or anything anymore, right? Okay, because I used to, I used to move the furniture in my house. I used my knees and my arms like I was some superhuman person, right? I guess that it has finally caught up with me. I can't do that anymore. I have to accept that it is going to be debilitating. So why don't you stop? Okay, right? So there are some things that I accept my limitations in certain areas of my life. I encourage you to do the same. It is healing and it is healthy and it is helpful, right? You're in a partnership, talk to your partner. There are some things that I am not good at. There are some things, this is not my strong area. This is not my area of strength. You operate better in this area. Why don't you run with this part of it and I will do this. That is healthy and that is responsible. Okay? When it comes to addiction, addiction is a monkey that it rides you. Did you know that? It does not get off your back, especially substances. And here's the thing, if you are accustomed to taking a drink at 7 o'clock in the evening, every evening at 7 o'clock, you're going to feel for that drink. So go to the gym until the feeling passes. Go for a run. It's winter, you can't do anything. Go work out. Pick up your book, read a book, and talk yourself off that ledge. Sometimes you can't find your sponsor. Sometimes you can't find me. You can't find anybody else. Talk to yourself. Talk to yourself. And go play that song on YouTube. There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood. Wash all their. It is that song is so healing. It's so healing. It will refresh you. It will heal you. And you're going to shed some tears. And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Tears are refreshing and healing. Okay? It's going to be okay. You're okay now? I can go? You're okay? Are you sure? Are you sure? You have this. You can play this back. Because remember, this is on Facebook. So it's going to show up again, right? So you can play this back and listen to the parts that gave you strength and listen to the parts that you want to take notes out of or whatever. Okay? I'm only going to do these for a few more and then we're going to change the format. So, right? Because this is some good stuff. Say good stuff. Good stuff, right? I love you. You see, know why we have to love one another? Because we're all in this thing together. We're human. We've all been there. We've all had some stories to tell. Right? We all have stories to tell. And our lives are made richer. I wouldn't be interesting if I hadn't gone through some stuff. Think about it. And when I thought I had plateaued in terms of life experiences, I found there was a whole other wave of stuff that was waiting for me to walk through. But I look at it like it's good. It's an opportunity. I solved that. I walked through that. And I know I can tell you how to come over. So I'm going to go turn YouTube on and I'm going to listen to this song, Myself Too, because it's been in me all morning long, just there. Wouldn't leave me. It's still on my mouth because some of the stuff that we have gone through. And can I just apologize? It wasn't fair. It was not fair for you to lose your job. It wasn't fair for your spouse to walk out on you and tell you they don't want you anymore. And you have this life that you created together and they tell you they don't want you anymore. It's not fair for you to see that they're gone on living their lives and they look happy with someone else. It's not fair. It wasn't fair. The company still moved on without you. And it feels like life stopped. Your life stopped, but everybody else is continuing. It's not fair. But take strength that today, just for today, tomorrow we'll worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't here yet. We don't know if we'll come to tomorrow because the way the folks are are acting, we don't know what will happen, right? It takes 28 days straight to develop a habit, and it takes 28 days straight to break a habit. That's a good place to start. Thank you, Dr. Simpson, right? So start good habits now. Talk to yourself, right? Don't worry about tomorrow. Have a plan. Yes, it's good to have a plan because a plan tells you in your mind that there is hope. That's what plans do. Gives you hope for the future. Something happens, you say, I have a plan for that. You have hope, right? And work and develop the plan. Sometimes it takes more work and more work because we have more barriers. The more I wade through this stuff, is the more barriers I see that I never saw before. Is the more ways I see. Is the more I'm developing collaborations. Is the more I'm reaching out to people whom I probably normally would have overlooked or would not have deemed important to the process. You see what I'm saying? So I'm learning as I go along. Is it taking me longer than I thought? Yeah, because I chose to do it the right way, right? Because that's the only way to do it, right? So take your time. Take your time. You have all the time in the world. Time is irrelevant in this. Say time is irrelevant. Time is irrelevant. You have all the time in the world. All the time. One day, one step at a time. Amen. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been enlivening to be with you. You have blessed me and blessed my soul. Thank you for sharing this bright Thursday morning with me. I feel incredibly blessed to have been a part of your Thursday morning experience. I can't tell you thank you enough. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Go to my website, harrietkemick.com. Look at what we do, and then go over to the ExodusFoundation.com. That's where we ask for your help. Support us. Help us to bring this message, this empowering message. Is one of the things we teach the girls who come into our program. We teach them life skills. I talk to them just like I talk to you, and help us to continue to deliver this service. So go to the ExodusFoundation.com, click on the contribute. It's right on the front page. You don't have to go any further. Just click on contribute and hit it and send us a blessing. I don't care what you do, whatever you give, it is always going to be received. And I'm so grateful that you wish me well and that you want to see us continue to progress. So go to the ExodusFoundation.com and click on contribute and make a donation of any kind. It helps us to continue providing services to victims of human sex trafficking. But for the grace of God, say, but for the grace of God, but for the grace of God, go I. It could have been me. It could have been me, right? And that is why there is a fountain filled with blood that I plunged under that helped me incredibly. Thank you so much. I love you all. Facebook folks. Facebook, I'm partial to you all. Hey, how's it going? I love you all. Thank you so much, everybody. Periscope and Twitter, you make my day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Be blessed. But my friends over here on Facebook, hey, bye. I'll see you tomorrow, right? So we're going to keep talking. And tomorrow is Freaky Friday. It's Freaky Friday. So we'll talk some more. But listen to this over and over again, that it helps you to overcome the addictions that you and I have come to, and help yourself and share it with someone. This is a good message. Thank you so much, everybody. Be blessed. Bye, everybody. Bye for now. That was good, huh? That was really good. That was really, really, really good. Really good. Thank you so much.